A slap is the last thing you'd imagine as a lifesaver, isn't it? But at midnight, with my husband's life fading, my hand cracked across his face, and that desperate act pulled him back from the abyss. My name is Emily Carter, 35 years old, and this is the raw, heart-stopping story of how I learned that love can demand a fierce, shocking fight to save someone you can't lose. It was an ordinary Tuesday night, the kind that fades into the blur of a hectic week. Tom and I had crawled into bed around 10 p.m., drained from work and the endless juggle of life. Our bedroom was a haven of quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the ceiling fan spinning above. I was half asleep, my mind drifting through fragments of dreams, when a strange, guttural noise jolted me awake. It was Tom. His breathing was wrong sharp, ragged, like he was fighting for every gasp. My heart lurched, a cold wave of dread flooding my veins. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 12:17 a.m., its red numbers casting a haunting light across the room. I fumbled for the lamp, my fingers clumsy on the switch. Light spilled over the bed, and the sight of Tom hit me like a physical blow. His face was ghostly pale, his skin slick with sweat that soaked his t-shirt to his chest. His body convulsed violently, arms and legs jerking in erratic, unnatural spasms, like a puppet with cut strings. His eyes were rolled back, showing only the whites, his mouth twitching with low, guttural moans that sent chills down my spine. "Tom!" I shouted, my voice shrill, splitting the silence. I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him hard, willing him to snap out of it. He didn't respond, didn't flinch, just kept seizing, his body thrashing against the mattress, the bed frame creaking under the strain. I knew instantly what this was. Hypoglycemia, his type 1 diabetes turning predator in the dead of night. Tom had been diagnosed at 19, after collapsing in a college lecture hall, his blood sugar so low he'd nearly slipped into a coma. For 16 years, we'd managed it together: insulin injections, carb counting, regular checkups at the endocrinologist. We were diligent, almost obsessive, but hypoglycemia is a silent thief, striking without warning. This wasn't the familiar shakiness or sweating we'd handled before. This was a full-blown crisis, his blood sugar plummeting so low his brain was starving for glucose. I scrambled to the nightstand, my hands trembling as I grabbed the glucose meter we kept in the top drawer. The case slipped from my grip, clattering to the floor, and I cursed under my breath, diving under the bed to retrieve it. I pricked Tom's finger, my hands shaking so badly I nearly missed the mark, smearing a drop of blood on the test strip. My pulse hammered in my ears as I waited for the reading. The number flashed. 42 milligrams. DL. My stomach plummeted. Anything below 70 was dangerous. Below 50 was life-threatening, a point where the brain begins to shut down, unable to function without glucose. Tom was teetering on the edge, his body and mine in a race against time. I reached for the tin of sugar cubes we kept for emergencies, a habit drilled into us by years of caution. My fingers fumbled with the metal lid, popping it open with a clink, and I grabbed a cube, pressing it to Tom's lips. "Come on, Tom, please," I whispered, my voice trembling with desperation. But his jaw was locked tight, teeth clenched, refusing to open, his seizures making it impossible to get the sugar inside. The cube crumbled against his mouth, grains scattering onto the pillow like tiny, useless snowflakes. I tried another, pushing harder, my nails scraping his lips in my frantic attempt. But it was no good. His convulsions grew worse, his body arching off the bed, a low, guttural groan escaping his throat that twisted my heart. Time was slipping away, each second pulling him further from me. My mind raced, clawing through fragments of diabetes training we'd sat through years ago. Sugar cubes required swallowing, and Tom couldn't swallow, not with his jaw clenched and his body in chaos. I needed something that could deliver glucose another way, something that didn't rely on his ability to eat or drink. Then it hit me. Honey, I'd read about it in a diabetes pamphlet, buried in a section on emergency care, and seen it mentioned in online forums for diabetic caregivers. Honey's thick, sticky texture could absorb through the skin or the mucous membranes of the gums, delivering glucose directly into the bloodstream. Even if the person was unresponsive, we had a jar in the kitchen, a half-empty one from lazy Sunday pancakes, sitting on the counter. It was a long shot, but it was my only shot. I bolted from the bed, my bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood floor as I sprinted downstairs. The house was dark, the silence oppressive except for the faint echo of Tom's moans drifting from the bedroom, each one a knife in my chest. I yanked open the pantry door, knocking over a box of cereal that spilled across the counter in a cascade of flakes, and grabbed the honey jar, its glass cool and heavy in my hand. The lid was sticky, maddeningly resistant, and I twisted it with shaking hands, my nails digging into the metal until it popped free. I didn't wait. Didn't think, just ran back upstairs, my breath ragged, my heart pounding like a war drum. The stairs seemed endless, each step a battle against the panic threatening to swallow me whole. Tom was still seizing when I reached him, his body rigid then limp, over and over, his face even paler, if that was possible. His sweat-soaked hair clung to his forehead, and his moans had weakened, barely audible. I knelt beside him, dipping my fingers into the honey jar. The golden syrup clung to my skin, and I scooped out the thick glob, smearing it across his cheek with trembling hands. I rubbed it in, pressing firmly, my fingers moving in small, urgent circles, willing the glucose to absorb through his skin and into his bloodstream. I smeared more inside his mouth, along his gums, careful not to block his airway, hoping the mucous membranes would take it in faster. My hands were sticky, the honey dripping onto the sheets, but I didn't care. All that mattered was Tom. I watched, my breath held, searching for any sign of change, slower seizures, clearer eyes, anything. His convulsions didn't stop. His eyes stayed vacant, his breathing shallow, barely there. The honey wasn't working, or it wasn't working fast enough. My chest tightened, panic surging like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me. I couldn't lose him. Not Tom, not the man who laughed at my terrible puns, who held me through every storm, who made our small, messy life feel like everything. Not like this, not in our bed. Not when I was right here, helpless. I had to do something, anything, to pull him back. My mind scrambled, grasping at half-remembered facts from a first aid class we'd taken years ago. A mandatory session for families of diabetics. A sharp stimulus pain. Nose. Something sudden could sometimes jolt someone out of a seizure, resetting their nervous system just enough to buy time, to keep them conscious until help arrived or treatment took effect. It was a desperate measure, a last resort. But I was out of options. My hand trembled as I raised it, my heart screaming that this was wrong, that I couldn't hurt him. Every instinct told me to cradle him, to soothe him, not to strike him. That love isn't always soft, it's fierce. It's raw. It's whatever it takes to keep someone alive. I swung, my palm connecting with his cheek in a sharp, resounding slap that echoed like a thunderclap in the quiet room. The sound hung in the air, jarring, unnatural. Tom's head snapped to the side, his body stilling for a heartbeat, the seizures pausing as if shocked into submission. The silence was deafening, my hands stinging, my breath caught in my throat. Then, his eyes fluttered, half open, glassy but alive, a faint spark of awareness breaking through. Tom, I gasped, tears burning my eyes, spilling over onto my cheeks. I grabbed the honey jar again, scooping more and smearing it on his other cheek, rubbing it in with frantic urgency. Stay with me. Please, stay with me, I begged, my voice a shaky prayer, raw with fear and hope. His breathing hitched, then steadied, just a fraction. But it was enough to keep me going. The seizures slowed, his body less rigid, his groans quieter, more human. I kept talking, my words tumbling out, a lifeline to tether him to me. "You're okay, Tom. I'm here. You're going to be okay." I snatched the glucose meter again, pricking his finger with practiced speed. Though my hands still shook, the number flashed. 48 milligrams. DL. Still critical, but climbing, inching away from the abyss. The honey was working, slowly, delivering glucose through his skin and gums, buying us precious seconds. I smeared more honey on his cheeks, alternating sides, rubbing it in with steady pressure. I checked his mouth, ensuring the honey along his gums wasn't obstructing his airway. My fingers sticky and trembling. His blood sugar hit 55, then 60, still dangerously low. But he was stabilizing, his body responding to the glucose. Minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last, an eternity of waiting and watching. I stayed glued to his side, one hand on the honey jar, the other on his arm, feeling the faint warmth of his skin, grounding myself in the fact that he was still here. His seizures weakened, his body calmer, his eyes focusing a bit more, flicking toward me with a flicker of recognition. "Anne," he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper, rough and confused, like he was waking from a nightmare. My heart leapt, tears streaming down my face, relief crashing over me like a wave. "I'm here," I said, my throat tight, my voice breaking. "You're okay, Tom. Just hang on." I kept the honey on his cheeks, rubbing gently, not daring to stop, even as his blood sugar climbed to 65. My hands still stung from the slap, guilt creeping in like a shadow, but I pushed it away. He was alive, breathing, talking. That was all that mattered. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with one hand while keeping the other on Tom's, my fingers intertwined with his. "My husband's having a hypoglycemic seizure," I told the operator, my voice shaking but clear, forcing myself to stay calm. "He's type 1 diabetic. Blood sugar's at 65. I've got honey on his cheeks and gums. He's stabilizing, but he's not okay." The operator was calm, her voice a steady anchor in the storm. "You're doing great, Emily. Keep monitoring his levels. Keep the honey on. Check his airway. Paramedics are 6 minutes out." 6 minutes felt like a lifetime. But I clung to her words, repeating them in my head like a mantra. I checked Tom's blood sugar again. 70 milligrams. DL. The honey was holding him steady, the glucose absorbing through his skin and gums, bridging the gap until help arrived. His seizures had nearly stopped, his body limp but calm, his breathing steadier. His hand twitched, fingers brushing mine, and I grabbed them, squeezing tight, feeling the faint strength in his grip. "What happened?" he rasped, his voice faint, confusion clouding his eyes as he tried to piece together the chaos. I swallowed hard, the guilt flaring again, sharp and heavy. "Your sugar crashed," I said softly, my voice steady despite the tears. "You were seizing. I slapped you to wake you up." He blinked, processing, then gave a faint nod, his lips twitching in a weak attempt at a smile. "See, okay," he mumbled, his fingers tightening on mine. A silent thank you. Tears spilled down my cheeks, relief and fear tangling together in a knot I couldn't untie. He was here, talking, alive. Ambulance lights flashed through the window, red and blue slicing through the dark, a beacon of hope. The paramedics burst in, their boots heavy on the hardwood, equipment clanking as they moved with practiced efficiency. I stepped back, still clutching the honey jar, my bare feet cold against the floor, my body trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. They surrounded Tom, checking his vitals, their voices clipped and professional. The lead paramedic, a gruff man with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard, noticed the honey smeared on Tom's cheeks and inside his mouth. "Good call," he said, nodding at me, his tone carrying a hint of respect. That probably bought him time. I exhaled, shaky, my legs suddenly weak. The weight of the night crashing down on me. The paramedics hooked Tom to N4, pushing a dextrose solution to stabilize his blood sugar further. His color was returning, his eyes clearer, though exhaustion weighed him down like a heavy blanket. I followed them to the ambulance, barefoot on the cold driveway, the honey jar still in my hand, its sticky weight a reminder of the fight. The hospital was a sterile maze of white walls, fluorescent lights, and beeping monitors. Tom was admitted to the ICU, his bed surrounded by machines tracking every heartbeat, every breath, their steady rhythm a lifeline. I sat beside him, my hand in his, watching him sleep, his chest rising and falling, each breath a small victory. My palms still stung from the slap, a quiet echo of what I'd done. I replayed the moment in my head, sound, the jolt, the fear that I'd gone too far. I'd hit the man I loved, the man I'd vowed to protect, to cherish. But it had worked, and that truth anchored me, even as guilt gnawed at the edges of my mind. A doctor came in, a woman with short grey hair and a gentle voice, her name tag reading Dr. Tatel. Her eyes were kind but tired, the kind of tired that comes from too many nights spent pulling patients back from the brink. She sat across from me, Tom's chart in her hands, and explained hypoglycemia in meticulous detail, her words a mix of science and reassurance. Hypoglycemia in type 1 diabetics can escalate quickly, she said, her voice steady. When blood sugar drops below 50, the brain lacks the glucose it needs to function, triggering seizures or loss of consciousness. Seizures prevent swallowing, which is why oral sugar didn't work. The honey was a smart move. Glucose can absorb through the skin and mucous membranes, though it's slower than N4. She paused, glancing at Tom, then back at me. That slap was bold, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. A sharp stimulus can sometimes disrupt a seizure, giving the body a chance to respond to treatment. You acted fast, Emily. That made the difference. I nodded, guilt and relief warring inside me, her words a bomb to the raw edges of my heart. Is he going to be okay? I asked, my voice small, almost afraid of the answer. Dr. Patel's expression softened. He's stable now. We'll keep him for observation, adjust his insulin regimen. He's lucky to have you. Tom stirred, his eyes opening, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion. My hero, he whispered, his voice hoarse but warm, his hand squeezing mine. I laughed, tears falling, and squeezed back. You scared the hell out of me, I said, my voice catching, a mix of love and lingering fear. We stayed in the hospital for 2 days, a blur of tests, consultations, and quiet moments. Tom's blood sugar stabilized, his insulin pump recalibrated with a new algorithm to prevent another crash. I hovered, checking his meter obsessively, jumping at every beep from the monitors, my nerves still frayed from that night. Tom didn't mind my fussing. He knew I was terrified, still haunted by the image of his seizures, his vacant eyes. He'd catch my eye sometimes, giving me a look that said, I'm still here, It was enough to keep me grounded, to remind me we'd made it through. Back home, we built a fortress against hypoglycemia, a new routine rooted in vigilance. Honey jars were everywhere, Abraham, kitchen, car, even my purse, each one labeled with bright red tape, a silent alarm for emergencies. Tom teased me, calling it Emily's arsenal, but he never moved them. They were as much for my peace of mind as for his safety. I threw myself into learning everything I could about hypoglycemia, determined to be ready if it struck again. It's a silent predator, striking without warning, especially in type 1 diabetics like Tom. Blood sugar below 70 milligrams. DL can cause sweating, shaking, or confusion. Below 50, it can trigger seizures, coma, or death. Speed is everything, and preparation is the only defense. First aid for hypoglycemia is straightforward but critical, and I memorize every step, drilling it into my mind like a soldier preparing for battle. If the person is conscious and able to swallow, give fast-acting sugar 15 grams of carbohydrates, like 4 ounces of orange juice, a tablespoon of honey, or 3 to 4 glucose tablets. Wait 15 minutes, check their blood sugar, and repeat if it's still below 70. If they're unresponsive, like Tom, swallowing isn't an option. In that case, smear honey, glucose gel, or even cake frosting on their cheeks or inside their mouth, along the gums, where the mucous membranes can absorb it. Rub it in gently but firmly, ensuring it doesn't block their airway. For severe cases, a glucagon injection kit in an emergency kit can deliver a quick dose of glucose-releasing hormone, but it requires training to administer correctly. Always call 911 for seizures or unconsciousness. No exceptions. While waiting, monitor their breathing and pulse, and keep checking their blood sugar if you have a meter. If you are alone like I was, stay calm, panic, waste time. Every action counts, every second matters. That night reshaped me. I'd always thought love was gentle, soft words, warm embraces, quiet moments over coffee. But love can be fierce. A slap in the dark, a desperate act to save someone. I'd do it again. No hesitation, no regrets. Tom and I talk about it now. Sometimes laughing, sometimes quiet. He jokes about my killer slap, mimicking the motion with a grin, but his hand lingers on mine, saying what words don't. We're stronger, bound by a moment that could have shattered us. The fear hasn't left. Not completely. I still wake up some nights, my heart racing, checking Tom's breathing, my hand hovering over the honey jar. He pulls me close, murmuring, "I'm okay," and his voice sleepy but sure. Slowly, the nightmares fade, replaced by trust in our system. Our friends were stunned when we told them, "You slapped him." They'd ask, "Eyes why?" Half laughing, half horrified. I'd shrug, a little defensive, a little proud. It worked, didn't it? The story spread, and soon, neighbors were knocking, asking for advice. I found myself explaining hypoglycemia to anyone who'd listen how to spot the signs, how to act fast, how to save a life. It felt good, turning terror into something useful, empowering others with knowledge we'd learned the hard way. We met with a diabetes educator, Karen, a no-nonsense woman with a clipboard and a mission. She drilled us on emergency protocols, glucose kit, backup meters. The works. Speed is everything, she said, eyes locking on mine, and I nodded, the memory of that night burning in my chest. Karen showed us how to use a glucagon kit, an injectable last resort for when honey or gel isn't enough. We practiced with a dummy vial, mixing the powder and liquid, drawing it into the syringe, my hands steady now, muscle memory kicking in. Tom watched, quiet, trusting me to take charge if it came to that. Tom's back to his old self now, joking, sneaking extra dessert, rolling his eyes when I check his meter. But he glances at the honey jar sometimes, a grin tugging at his lips. "My lifesaver," he says, and I blush, waving him off. But my heart swells. That midnight scare feels like a lifetime ago. But it's never far. It's a shadow, a reminder to stay sharp. We've got a systemators, kits, honey on standby. We're ready, but I pray we never need it. Love is a strange thing, isn't it? It's tender and brutal, quiet and loud, soft and fierce. I learned that at 12:17 a.m. with a slap and a jar of honey, and I'd choose it every single time. The weeks after were a whirlwind of doctor visits and adjustments. Tom's endocrinologist, Dr. Nien, tweaked his insulin regimen, adding a continuous glucose monitor that buzzed if his levels dipped. The device was a game changer. Its tiny sensor taped to Tom's arm, sending real-time data to an app on my phone. I learned to trust it, but I still check manually, my fingers quick on the meter, just to be sure. Our house became a fortress against hypoglycemia. I labeled every honey jar with bright red tape, a silent alarm for emergencies, and placed them strategically next kitchen counter, glove compartment, even a small travel jar in my purse. Tom laughed, calling it overkill, but he never moved them. They were as much for my peace of mind as for his safety. We started hosting small gatherings, sharing what we'd learned with friends and neighbors. Some brought their diabetic relatives, and I'd walk them through the basics: how to recognize symptoms, how to respond, how to stay calm under pressure. It felt like paying it forward, turning our scare into a ripple of preparedness, a community better equipped to face the same crisis. Tom's seizures left him sore for days, his muscles aching from the violent convulsions. He didn't talk about it much, but I saw it in his eyes: gratitude, mixed with a flicker of fear, a quiet acknowledgement of how close we'd come. We leaned into each other, closer than ever, our bond forged in the fire of that night. One night, months later, we sat on the porch, the air cool, stars bright overhead. Tom held my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin, a familiar, grounding touch. "You saved me, Em," he said, his voice low, steady, carrying the weight of everything we'd been through. Not just that night, every day. I smiled, my throat tight, tears pricking my eyes. "You're stuck with me," I teased, but my heart was full, overflowing with love and resolve. That night, that slap, that jar of honey, it wasn't just a crisis. It was a promise, a vow to fight for each other. No matter what, we keep living, loving, fighting. The honey jar sits on the nightstand, a quiet sentinel, its red tape catching the light. Hypoglycemia is part of our story, but it's not the whole book. We've got pages left to write, and I'll be there, every word, every breath. Life moves on, but the lessons linger. I carry them with me, in the weight of the honey jar, in the rhythm of Tom's breathing, in the strength of our love. We're prepared, we're vigilant, and we're together. That's enough.